I can only see what I see. If you see it as a checklist of things to do versus the reason why I'm doing it is because inherently I am missing something, inherently I can't see it all, that is the pathway. There is some sense here. Whenever that happens, that's the light bell for me. It's in this moment that you have the most to be curious about.
Welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom, where we share pearls of wisdom shared by some of the world's top entrepreneurs, leaders, and difference makers. Here's your host, Govind Jayaraman.
Hi, I'm Govind Jayaraman, and this is Paper Napkin Wisdom, episode 329. Thanks for joining us. Today's conversation might gently unsettle something you've been certain about in the best possible way. Because if you've ever believed you were right, if you've ever felt confident in how you see a situation, if you've ever thought, I know exactly what's going on here, then this episode invites you to consider something deeper. What if your perspective is true and incomplete? My guest today, Susan Asiyanbi, is one of only two people in over 300 episodes who have ever drawn eyes on a napkin. And beneath those eyes, she wrote a simple phrase that carries enormous weight. Help me see what you see. As you listen, you might begin to notice moments where you recognize yourself in meetings, in leadership, in family conversations, in the assumptions you didn't realize you were making. Susan brings a powerful, grounded wisdom to the idea that curiosity isn't a soft skill, it's a sophisticated one. And the leaders who create the greatest clarity, alignment, and momentum are often the ones who are willing to slow down their thinking just enough to truly understand what they're missing. If you don't have to agree with everything you hear today, you don't even have to change your mind immediately. But you might find yourself seeing familiar situations through a slightly different lens. So as you listen, you may want to ask yourself quietly, honestly, where might I be certain and incomplete? Who could help me see what I don't see yet? Let's dive into my conversation with Susan. Susan Asiyanbi, welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom. I'm excited to have you here today.
So thrilled to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
So I said this, so it's a spoiler alert kind of thing. I said this to you in the green room, but there are two people across 300 plus napkins. There are two people who have ever put eyeballs on a napkin. You and another very powerful woman. Her name is Christina Harbridge. And I'm really curious to get into your perspective on why you did that. And both napkins had really powerful lashes. So yours has powerful lashes, and so does hers. So there's a lot of similarity, but I'm sure there's a lot of difference in the perspective. So thank you for putting a sketch to it.
Absolutely.
And thank you for that. Let's underneath the beautiful eyeballs, you've put in quotes, help me see what you see. Mm-hmm. Why did you share that with me?
Yes, absolutely. I just think in leadership more broadly, whether that be leadership at work, leadership as a form of in your personal life, is just so critical to frame and see the world in a way where you know that your perspective is true and also incomplete. And that inherent in how we lead and how we see the world, that we have to acknowledge that we're onto something, we're missing something, the other person is onto something, they're missing something, and that's where the beauty of learning comes in.
Yeah, I think you said something that just that I almost thought I misheard until you sort of repeated it. You said your perspective is true and also incomplete.
Yeah,
that's a powerful phrase by itself. What does that mean?
Yeah, I just think it's a way of seeing the world where you believe that you might be missing things. That I can experience something and someone can experience the same thing and see it differently. They can experience the same thing and help me see that if they mirror it back to me, that there may be some aspects that I'm missing. And so oftentimes, whether it be when I am leading, when I'm watching other leaders lead, people will talk about, this is the direction we need to go and this is why. And another person will say, I see it differently for this reason. What you didn't see is X, Y, and Z. And depending on where you sit, what your role is, whether that be professionally or personally, you will only see what you see based off your experiences. And that is the beauty of being in community, working in groups, is that other people see different things that together can enhance the picture.
That's beautiful. Um, so, one of the things that I like to say often is we see the world as we are, not as it is. And you're
Yeah.
saying something very similar to that. And you identified an opportunity for leaders to right away notice, right? If someone says, I see it differently,
Yeah.
that might be a clue. But I think that in your work, you've gotten pretty deliberate about eliciting those different perspectives. Can you tell me a little bit more about how leaders can create space to not impose singularly their view, but encourage that before the picture becomes more complete?
Yes, absolutely. I often say, like, what are the ways that we can ask questions that just yield information? Tell me more. What have you seen that leads you to that belief? What did you see me doing that led you to that conclusion? And there are a set of questions that are not about defending a statement. There are a set of questions that are not about judgment on what the other person said. There are a set of questions that are truly about you being curious. Like, I am truly curious about what you said and what made you think that, and what I said and why it made you have that reaction. I'll get to the point of determining how I feel about that or whether I agree with that. But before I move to, because even with I see it differently. Oftentimes I say, once you frame it and you start from that point, the person on the other end is already trying to, like, well, let me see what you see differently and, like, how I can refute that or what you're missing and what I'm saying versus let me just understand what you're saying. And if I can understand what you're saying, then I might see that I'm missing something, or you might have something to offer me that I can learn. And so it's a really sophisticated and disciplined way of slowing down the brain to really be about understanding and curiosity first before interrogating or before trying to determine the point of view on said comments.
Susan, I think it's really interesting because I think there is a bias to frame the perspective before asking the question. Hey, I might see this, even if you're saying I might see this differently, but what do you mean by that? People are on the defensive, even subtly, even unconsciously, they go to that place. Isn't that true?
Yes, not only is it true, your brain naturally is already determining how to respond to what the other person has to say, and which means that you can't fully hear what's being offered
Can't
because your
fully
brain is
hear.
not in that you cannot fully hear what the other person is saying. And so, what you're trying to train your brain, yourself to do is to say, let me activate the part of my brain that legitimately is just trying to understand where the person is coming from, legitimately trying to understand what they saw, what they heard, how they interpreted that. And I often tell people, as leaders, as human beings, we hear something, we might ask a question or two. And I often say, ask seven. Force
Ask
yourself to
7.
act 7 and see whether that enhances what you learned. And it never fails. It never fails. I observe teams all the time. People ask the 7. I'm like, did you learn anything new than you thought you would have learned from the first 2 questions that you were generally? And like, of course. I thought I disagreed with them. I actually don't disagree with them. I agree with that premise. I never had access to that data. So now I can completely understand why they have a perspective on why we should move a certain type of way or why they're reacting the way that they're reacting. And that's not only insightful, it's helpful. It's broadening my perspective, it's broadening my point of view, and what my own reaction to that is.
So when people hear that, I can see a leader somewhere going, Susan, 7 questions? I mean, I don't have time for that. I barely have time to do what I've already got going. And now you want me to ask 7 questions on top of sorry.
Yes.
What would you say to that person?
I say you're already spending the time. You're actually spending more time because let me tell you what happens. We ask the 1 or 2 questions. Those questions might not even truly be curiosity questions as much as like very, very quick. Let me get it. I already know what you mean. I've already decided. um, what your conclusion is and why you mean that conclusion. And then you move to a set of actions. You do a set of things, and those things eventually lead to misunderstanding, misalignment, relational breakdowns, and then you end up having to go back and repair. And that repair work not only takes 2, 3 times as much, the emotional energy that often goes into that, not just the execution energy. That if you would have just, and people often say, like, I don't have time to slow down. I'm like, it's not about slowing down. It's actually about being rigorous in conversation. And so the 7 questions are not about going slow. It's actually about ensuring that you can move in a very accelerated pattern, an accelerated mode, but to do so in a way that is that allows you to accelerate and move quicker later.
So when people talk about this though, do you ever hear people say stuff like, "Okay, Susan, that's a soft skill. It's not really got ROI attached to it." What would you say to that person?
Say it's not a soft skill, it's a sophisticated skill, which means it's the harder skill to actually learn. The hard skills are the ones that people can learn and pick up on, or, with the age of technology can find ways to get that work done and automate it. The sophisticated skills of learning how to work with one another and to lead together is one that takes real finesse. And what we often see in terms of the ROI is that the more that people can understand the differences, see the similarities, the faster they're able to integrate, which actually has a direct return on innovation. And instead, if you read, whether it be the HBR articles or otherwise, they talk about how 50% of time is wasted time that executives spend on teams because of the rework that has to be done, because of the time that people spend not knowing how to integrate with one another, not knowing, like being in silence because they shut each other down unintentionally. And so there's a lot of wasted energy that happens because of misunderstanding, because of misalignment, because people aren't stopping to see what they don't see. And
Yeah.
so that's what I would say is that the ROI, like the possibility of actually increasing the ROI comes from your ability to have these sophisticated skills.
Don't you find it interesting? I always find this very interesting that a lot of pushback I get from leaders relates to the time it takes to nurture personal relationships, right? And yet, show me any income statement on the planet and people, if it's not the number one cost, it's the number two cost.
Yes,
So we tend to downplay these soft skills, but really there is no
yes.
greater place to get return on investment than from the number one or number two cost item in your company.
It is not only the number 1 or number 2 cost item in the company, it is also the thing when you talk to people, they spend their vast waking hours not only trying to get work done, being frustrated by work, going home and talking about their colleagues, and they spend a ton of time and energy around the state of doing work together. We know that talent is a key necessity to being able to move things through, to reaching goals and outcomes, to doing big and bold things. And so I always say it's the underinvestment where people feel like, I just want to get to the goal. I don't want to spend time on the feelings. I don't want to spend time on the people. And in reality, work not only gets done through the people, the innovation gets done through the people. Teaching people how to negotiate, how to work together, how to lead through challenges is the path forward. So you're absolutely spot on in terms of we spend the vast majority of our investments on talent, on people, on relationships.
Yeah. And are you really saying that curiosity is the key?
Curiosity is the
It
key
literally is the key to open the door to that relationship? Is that
to
what you're saying?
everything, correct? Because we can give more grace to one another when we understand each other. We can have an appreciation for why someone sees the world a certain way. Doesn't necessarily mean we agree with it, but we have an appreciation. Like I like know you a little bit more deeper. I understand like why A plus B equals Y for you, and because I understand that, I can be in conversation with you about alternative ways and what I see and how that might be different from what you see. Oh, and by the way, because I can offer that, we might be able to come up with a third or fourth or fifth way that's better than what any individual one of us would have come up with. And so curiosity and learning both about the relationship, but about how we then make meaning of that, um, is very much about like why the eyes to me are so key. It's like you got to have the eyes enough to be curious about what's in store.
So it's not just, but I get the feeling that it's a lot deeper than just being curious and asking the question. It's really about understanding from their perspective what they see. And that requires not just asking the 7 questions, but confirming your understanding, doesn't it? Because sometimes we're hearing people, and if you ask me, you do this leadership test. I did this leadership test years ago, and the purpose was you interview somebody for 5 minutes, and then take as many notes as you want to, and then restate what that person said. And we got like 5% right. And I remember going into this thinking, man, I'm a really good listener. I came out with like, wow, I
Not
suck
as
at
much.
this.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. One of the tools that we teach people oftentimes is called like making sure that anytime that you're in the mode of curiosity, not in the mode of responding, but literally in the mode of trying to understand, the most important thing that you can do after you do your 7 is coming back and say, okay, let me try out what I heard. Let me try out what I heard. What help me understand, like, how would you improve upon what I just said? And it never fails. One of 2 things usually happens. Either A, the person says something to the degree of like, no, that's not what I said. It's like, okay, try again. And then they try again and then you test again. And then each time you get closer and closer. So that's what happens. Or the second route that we often see is that the leader will say, you are right. That's exactly what I said. And it was so helpful for you to play it back because I realized I missed something. Or I realized that that's not exactly what I meant. So let me add 2 or 3 other bullet points to what you just helped replay for me, what you mirrored back to me to make my statement more complete. And so it allows to get into the essence and the nuance behind comments. So absolutely, what you just talked about is what we would call testing. That after you do the 7 questions, it's the constant testing back to ensure that what I heard is what you intended. And again, this is all before diving into here's what I think about that.
Yeah. But isn't it incredible though, once we do the questions and the testing the way you refer to it, it gives us connection to the person, which is the currency for challenge. Now I am in a position, now we're on the same page. Now the other person can say, yes, you understood me. So
Yes.
now we have connected. So that's the currency for challenge, isn't it?
It's the currency for challenge. It's the currency for change. It's the currency for doing some shared work together. Because once I feel understood, then I can say, like, to your point, okay, what do you see and what might I be missing? Because I believe that you get where I'm coming from. Um, and then again, we can volley together as a result of such.
We're on the same playing field is
We're on the
really what
same
we've
playing
done.
field.
We've actually put ourselves in the same arena if we've done that in that way. And so curiosity is the doorway to open communication. One of the things it's a global subject, and I think this is a really big deal. And I'm curious what you thought about it because it popped up when you were speaking. Is everybody's concerned about industrial economic productivity? That post 2020, we've seen productivity across the globe plummet. Now, some places have done better than others. The US has actually done not bad relatively to others, but we haven't come back
Mhm.
to the previous productivity standards. And so one of the things I wonder is that I think that we've become less interested in what anybody else sees.
Yeah.
And isn't this is this what one of the missing ingredients that you've seen in productivity?
Yes, I would say a few things. Not only have we become less interested in what the other person thinks, we've just become less relational. And so people talking about connectivity as a more tactical thing, we need to bring people back to the office so that they connect, so that they talk to each other. But it's the skill of what's happening in that connection. How are we getting to understand each other to the point of the curiosity, understanding our thoughts, understanding what's driving those thoughts? How are we ensuring? One of the things that I often see in meetings or when observing leaders is oftentimes people are saying the same words and not meaning the same thing. So they're literally in a conversation. So one of the things that differentiates what we do is we'll literally sit in a room and we're like, do the thing that you do, whatever the meeting topic is, whatever the meeting agenda is. And literally everyone will be in conversations like, that was a great meeting. We're like, we want to stop you. And we want everyone to go around because we heard everyone use this word. What does that word mean to you? Because it seems like everyone feels that they are aligned and it never fails. Everyone goes around. And to the point that you raise, they all took away something different, even though they were using literally the same word. And so it's this piece where it's like what has happened is people have become less relational. They're using shortcuts in words. They're using shortcuts in connection and taking for granted that, again, there's a lot that lives under the surface.
I love this idea that people are becoming less relational and using shortcuts in words. Just so I think I get your meaning.
Yeah.
I would love for you to give me an example of that the audience can listen to and say, "Oh, I know what she means." Because this is really true. I see this happen a lot. Can you
Yes,
give me an
yes,
example,
yes.
Susan?
Absolutely. So I'm going to tell you about a team. In this team, you have the CEO, you have the chief operating officer, you have the chief people officer, and everyone's saying, we have a strategy problem, right? Like we're losing margin in the market. We need to move. Everyone's like, I agree we have a strategy problem. I totally agree we have a strategy problem. So everyone's like, yes, yes, yes. We got to make some action. People then leave the room. Literally, we'll like go observe. What is it that you took away from that? We have a strategy problem, and that is the reason why our people are leaving. And so as a result of such, it's culture. Culture is the thing. Culture, we have not done enough to bridge the type of community. Talk to the operations person. What did you take away? It's the strategy. People don't know how to execute the strategy. Like we are not executing efficiently, right? Then you move on to the next person. They do their version of it. All of a sudden you're like, interesting. They all use the word strategy, but the set of steps that they are taking are not aligned to the strategy. You hear the CEO, you're like, what were you saying when you said that like we have a strategy problem, we're losing our margins? Like, oh, the thing that I'm talking about is the fact that the market is moving differently. We need to update our product. Like our product is antiquated to what our customers are saying. I'm like, interesting. The HR person, the people person is going to do a set of things related to retention and culture. The operations person thinks that people are not executing on the strategy and that what was meant. And so this is a time where literally people are leveraging using the same words around strategy, but the intent behind what to go do is very different. And that happens quite often all the time in conversations where people will use the same words and they're common words. Things like we need leadership. We need to be in a culture that is big on acceleration and innovation. It's like, well, what does that mean? What does innovation mean to you? What does accelerating mean to you? What does going too slow mean to you? And no one is doing the work of saying, can you peel that back? Tell me what you meant when you said that we're not innovating enough. Because I have an idea about what that would mean and what I would go do. And so those are some of the things I'm talking about where it's like they're very common loaded words, but are interpreted in different ways that lead people to think they're in the same conversation and they're not.
That's so powerful, right? We like those big words because they can mean a lot. And the problem with those big words is they mean a lot. And it's interesting. It brings me back, and I want to just hop back to it because I think it's really powerful how this applies to every part of our lives. It's not just strategy and leadership and execution. We had a conversation early on talking about, you know, getting beyond how you doing, good, how you doing, fine, to what makes it fine, what makes it good, and how the holidays provide us with an opportunity to slow those things down and get to the meaning behind those things. We were talking about life and how that applies there too. So these are not skills that just show up on a balance sheet or income statement. They show up in our life, don't they?
Yes, yes, they absolutely do. And what I would say is, at least for me, I find that it's harder for me to do it in my personal life. The place that you would think that it's easier to do it because you have the connections, you have the family, you have the relationships where you can be maybe vulnerable in a different type of way. And I take more shortcuts because those things exist, which means I am prone to miss my families, their perspectives, their opinions, what they're intending much easier. I'll give you an example of such. So I shared this with you in our green room that I recently lost my dad. And so we are loving on each other as siblings and also on my mom. And we had this, what I call like do-si-do in my sibling group, because all of a sudden we all started with, we're all committed to supporting mom during this time. Like There's nothing more that we can do but love up on her. And we're like, yes, yes, we're all committed. We're all committed. We all start to move and do a set of things based off of that commitment that we're all supporting her. And everyone is like, what is going on with the other person? Like, that is not what we're talking about. That is not the strategy, and that's not the plan. And the reason why is because for me, the way in which I think we should love our mom is mom needs to be here. Like, they live abroad. They need to be in the US with us for us to support her, for to love on her. The grandkids, the great grandkids are here. She is moving here with us. My other brother is like, the way we love up on her is we honor her wishes. And so her wishes are that she wants to be back home with the friends and her best friends and family. And that's supporting and loving her. There's nothing better that we could do than to expedite getting her back home. Have another brother who's like, the most important thing that we can do is ensure that we have a long-term strategy for mom because she is also aging too. So the most important thing we can do is start researching. Where is she going to be? Right? Like, is she with us? Is it a facility? Is all these such. So we're all like literally moving based off an assumption of what it means to love on a mom. And all of a sudden, people are making moves, and we're looking at each other like, why are you doing that? Why are you wasting time doing that? We're doing this, and not even realizing that our definition of loving our mom meant lots of different things, and we never took the time to ask the 7 questions. Because it felt so common, loving our mom. Who's not going to say yes to that? It's like, of course, we all agree
Oh,
on
of course. Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Let's do that.
that. Yes,
And uh, and I love it because it's a shortcut on words. It's just and I think one of the things that you said, and I've got goosebumps even thinking about it because we have that shared experience this summer where my wife lost her father. And in fact, for those listening, we had scheduled this in the summer
yeah,
and it has been delayed twice. Once because of your family dynamic, and then again because of mine. So, but one of the things that I think is really powerful is that don't we take the greatest shortcuts with the people that we have the greatest connection? We
absolutely.
we have we make those assumptions. So it's in leadership and in life, the people that are closest to us that we are most likely not to understand what they see because we've just assumed it.
We've assumed it. We have lots of background history and experiences that we bring with us to everything that goes forward that we have not, whether it be in a positive way or in a challenging way, we have not shed. And so, as I often say, it's like we see through the same glasses. Those glasses are foggy. And so it doesn't allow us to say, like, you know what? It's not even that I need to clear the glasses. I just need new glasses. I need a whole new set of glasses when I'm engaging people that I'm close to. I sometimes need a whole new set of glasses, even for people I'm not close to, as a forcing mechanism to continue to ask, because it is very true that I think if I would have asked my siblings, so when you say that, what do you mean? Would have gotten a set of responses like, well, this is what I think. And then I would have said, like, okay, why do you think that? It's like, well, you know, mom said she doesn't want to be a burden to us. But and she said that 5 times to me. Right. And I would have been able to say, oh, she said that to me too, but that's not how I interpreted what she meant by that. I was like, well, what did you interpret? So I interpreted her as saying, I would like to be here, but I want you all to live your
But I'm
lives. I don't want to be,
concerned. Yeah.
I'm concerned that I'm going to be a burden to you. He's like, that's not what I heard at all. What I heard is, I don't want to be a burden at all. And by the way, I don't like the cold. And it's cold in Chicago. And so the combination of like, I don't want to be a burden and it's supposed to be cold leads me to a different set of solutions for like what I, mom, want from you, from my children. Um, and then we're having these collision courses unnecessarily, not because we all don't love mom, but because we have a set of data and we've now interpreted that data differently, but not, first of all, ask whether we all have the same data, which oftentimes we don't, because we're all having different conversations with mom and have different relationships with mom. And where we do have the same data, we're interpreting it differently. And I'm notorious for it. It's like, not only have I interpreted differently, I have decided that my interpretation is the right one. I have decided it's the right one. So any other
Conclusively, 100%.
exclusively, it's like that's exactly what she meant, and I have not missed anything. And the minute that other people who I love or who know me well slow me down enough to say, "Ooh, that's a way of thinking about it," but what if you're missing something? And they start to ask the 7 questions, and then they encourage me to ask the 7 questions. It never fails. I go and ask the 7 questions of my siblings. I was like, "Oh, yeah, that she didn't tell me that." It's like, now that makes sense as to why you're making those set of moves and actions. But again, it requires the stopping to not evaluate the responses, but holding myself still and saying, not evaluate, not have an opinion, not see how it's the same or different or whether I agree or disagree. It's legitimately just trying to understand where the other person is coming from and what's leading up to that. And so I'm like,
That's
I'm
so
constantly trying to say, like, Susan, open up your eyes, let them help you see what you don't see.
right. It's really powerful, and the applications are so broad. Um, we talked about productivity, we talked about family, we talked about you know, taking advantage of this ROI that we've got on our balance sheets and income statements around people. So, what's the earliest way? So let's also say, people are in this habit of underconnection today, right? Or superficially trying to get a connection to end. How how have you seen the early wins build momentum to remembering? Because it's really about remembering. I mean, people want to be part of something. They wouldn't sign up for this if they didn't. So they want to be part of something. They want to be part of the organization. In the family, they're not trying to fake lie and hide. So how do we remind them of the value?
Yes. I mean, I think that, at least from my perspective, the best way of reminding of the value is just constantly saying, remember that I can only see what I see. And I often say it's like both the orientation and the mindset of it as much as it is about the action. And I am constantly saying, yeah, there's some moves I can tell you. There's some questions I can give you. And those are helpful, right? The questions of what's going on? Why do you think that? Tell me what you're saying. Help me understand that we have to do a lot more open ended questions to generate responses, that we to ask a lot more of those. But it's not oftentimes I tell people, I can give you those questions, but if you see it as a checklist of things to do versus the reason why I'm doing it is because inherently I am missing something, inherently I can't see it all. That is the pathway, is the consistently saying, whether it be in personal relationships or working relationships. And quite honestly, in those moments where you're feeling the most frustrated or that you can't, like you can't follow, it's like, there is some sense here. Whenever that happens, that's the light bell for me. That's the ding dong that says, yep, it's in this moment that you have the most to be curious about.
So when you feel the frustration, it's time to get curious,
It's time to get curious. It's time to get curious, not to back away, not to say this person
not to
doesn't get
judge,
it,
not to
not to
conclude.
judge. Yep. It's like I'm going to teach my brain. I'm frustrated, curious.
Something you sort of slipped in that last little bit was you talked about if leaders go through it just like it's a checklist, the other person can tell, right?
Absolutely. You feel the energy.
Right. So if you come into it curious, like legitimately, if we prepare ourselves to be curious in a conversation, asking the wrong question from the right intent has value also, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Because if you ask the wrong question, but it's from the right intent, the person knowing that you're trying to get understanding might say, when you ask that question, here's what I'm interpreting. Is that your intention? Because they legitimately know that there's something you're trying to get from me, but I'm not experiencing it that way. So there's a lot more grace that we afford each other when the person experiences and feels the energy of understanding.
And we can do that by just setting the intention up front, right? We can just even like we don't have to have this gigantic
Yes,
skill set. We can just say, "Hey, you know, it may not come across this way all the way through, but I'm just really curious about what you're thinking here.
we can
So
say the
just give
attention.
me a little bit of grace if I get the words wrong,
Yes,
but really, I'm really curious. So can you
yes,
help me understand?"
yes. And not only can you do that, you can say, I'm really curious and I'm going to ask a series of questions. Help me out. And I'd love to know at the end if you can mirror back to me what you experienced. Like,
Yeah.
because
How do I get better at this?
how do I get better at this? I'm curious to learn what worked and what didn't work because that will help me. That signals to a person openness that you're legitimately trying to open your eyes to the possibility.
Right. And what have you noticed in organizations that adopt this philosophy for leaders? Like, what do you or what do you notice for the leaders? What do you notice for the organization? What happens? What are the early wins that people notice?
I noticed some of the early wins, I would say, from the people side. I find people are more excited to do rigorous work. So instead of this is challenging, I'm going to avoid it, or like it's a slog to whether it be work across teams. Instead, they're saying, that was so hard, but that was good, right? Like they have their list of next steps and they're energized to like go do their part of the contribution because everyone was on the same team, really grappling, really pushing with each other. And they felt like they were learning, quite honestly. It's like, I had something to contribute and I got really pushed and I want to be at my best. And so you start to see people, quite honestly, coming together to produce stronger outcomes because they're really hanging in there with one another. They're really building off each other's thoughts. They're really getting curious and saying, like, well, what if we did this? And what if we did that? And what's your thought on that? And asking the questions over and over of each other and building on each other's thoughts. And so from the people side, you see both the energy, you see the joy, you see people being able to contribute their best version, not only of themselves, but of their ideas. And on the company side, you get the benefit, the early wins of, we get some momentum here. We got some new, fresh ideas here. We have people who spend more of their time on the work and less on the internal dynamics and politics that are distracting from the work. And so you get less of the scurry of the behind the scenes, what I would say, um, broken relationships, less of the professional drama that people spend a ton of time on that they could be spending otherwise. And that, by the way, doesn't serve their interest either because they're not energized by it. They may use a ton of time talking about it, but when they slow down, it's depleting to them. So you get the energy and the outcomes at the same time as these early signals of win.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And one of the things that I fundamentally believe is that the core of the modern organization is to shift to an ecosystem. And what I mean by that is, in the past, organizations operated really to create value for clients and profit for the company, right? And that was it. There were two outcomes. The modern organization needs to rethink the core. So the
Yes.
core function of the business, yes, delivers value to the client. Yes, delivers profit for the company and grows your people. That's
Yes.
the third output that has to be there. And it was really interesting that you said that people were willing to do rigorous work and try it out, give it a shot because they felt like they were learning. It's almost like it's a necessary part of the
Yes.
core. If you want to build a modern organization where you're growing your people in quality and quantity, you have to do this, right?
Yes, yes. I'm so thrilled that you said that because it is not to be understood building a learning organization. And that learning organization is both learning on the organization's outcomes and products, but helping the people also learn about their leadership and themselves and how that naturally infuses to helping the company do better. So, yes, a spirit of learning at all times, learning, reflecting, applying, asking more questions, getting more curious. And it's just an engine that makes people want to say, it's never failed. When I talk to people who, it's like, why do you stay here? And they're like, I feel like I might have the same title, but my job has never been the same. I feel like I feel like my job changes all the time, but it's not just about the fact that my job changed all the time. It's about the fact I'm in an environment where I feel like I'm being productively challenged, productively pushed, productively stretched, where I have an opportunity to constantly be making myself and the company and organization better. And again, you called it like the soft skill. I called it the sophisticated skill. It's the sophisticated thing that executives who understand what it takes to build and sustain impact for scalable organizations, they recognize like how essential that is. It's like a core ingredient to success.
So we talked about the takeaway for organizations. What's the takeaway for leaders for who adopt this skill? What happens in their life, in their
Yes, I
business?
would say this piece around learning, I would say what you get back is growth mindset about yourself and about others. That I have potential. I often say, I ha- as much as I am breathing, I am learning. As much as I am learning, I'm still alive, and I still have a moment to lead and do all those steps. It's like there is still growth in me at every moment in time, and there is still growth in others as well, and that I can have a belief system of the potential of other people to expand and to grow and to have empathy for them as well as for myself.
And it doesn't make us weaker when we do this. I think that the question I wrote down was, can you grow without curiosity? And you really can't. But we've got a world where we're more entrenched in what we believed in 10 years ago versus what could be. And I think that you've opened the door to a conversation that's much deeper, much more powerful than that. So,
Yes.
um,
I love
I
you.
think
It's absolutely true. Growth in
right.
self and growth in organizations.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Susan, I'm grateful for this conversation. It brings us to this place where I evoke an old napkin that we got 11 plus years ago from John Rulin. He said, "What you appreciate appreciates." And he started a movement of gratitude where he not only believed that you appreciate the people in you, but you think about them from not what more can I do, but what's the most I can do to support them, to support this conversation. So, in that spirit, we ask all our guests over the last year, because he suddenly passed away a year ago. We've asked all our guests to shout out someone, to appreciate somebody. Who would you like to appreciate today?
Yes, I'm gonna say John and Louisa Asiyanbi, who are my parents. How timely, because I believe they sacrificed so that I could get the education to have the gift of curiosity. Their life has been all about how do we give you the ability to learn. Like, they've all been about, like, I'm not gonna give you things, I'm not gonna lead you to a certain destination, but I do want you to have the ability to learn and ask questions and advocate for yourself. And so, I think this whole spirit of like opening up my eyes and curiosity has been born by them. And so I offer gratitude and honor to them for pouring that into the DNA of who I am.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you for the time.
As we wrap up this conversation, I invite you to notice what may still be working gently on you, because sometimes the most powerful shifts don't arrive as answers, they arrive as better questions. And today, Susan reminded us that our perspective can be true and at the same time incomplete. That curiosity isn't weakness, it isn't hesitation, it's not a soft skill, it's a sophisticated discipline, one that opens the door to greater understanding, connection, innovation, and real sustainable momentum. You may find yourself replaying moments from this conversation, the idea of asking 7 questions, the power of testing understanding before reacting, the realization that shared words don't always mean shared meaning, and the quiet truth that we often take the biggest shortcuts with the people who are closest to us. And if something in you feels stirred, not rushed, not pressured, just aware, that's usually a sign that there's something here worth carrying forward. So before you move on to whatever comes next, you might ask yourself, where in my life or leadership could curiosity replace certainty? Who could I invite to help me see what I don't yet see? And what might become possible if understanding came before judgment? If this episode resonated with you, take a moment, write your insight down on a napkin if you can. One idea, one shift, one small commitment to seeing more clearly together. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who might benefit from a different lens right now. Thanks for listening to Paper Napkin Wisdom. I'm Govind Jayaraman. Until next time, stay curious, stay open, and remember, sometimes the most powerful leadership move is simply saying, help me see what you see. Make it a great day.